under public business and private members' motions. But before we begin, let's try a parliamentary trivia question. True or false? The budget debate is opened by the Prime Minister. You can get the answer at the end of this introduction. Under public business, the State of the Constituency debate continues with Member of Parliament for St. Anne Northwestern, Ms. Krystal Lee, and Member of Parliament for Kingston Eastern and Port Royal, Mr. Phillip Paulwell. For your information, the constituency debate gives members of Parliament the opportunity not only to elaborate on their performance in their constituencies, but also get support from the Ministry of Finance to implement projects. According to the Standing Order Committee, this debate should take place in the third quarter of the year, prior to the budget call, and it should be concluded within a period of 6 weeks from September to the end of October. It should be noted that the agenda can be adjusted with items being added, removed, or replaced. If you are planning to attend a session, here are some things you should keep in mind. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card from the office of the clerk. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. It's almost time to go to the main event, but before that, let's get the answer to the trivia question we asked. True or false? The budget debate is opened by the Prime Minister. It's false. The truth is, the budget debate is opened by the Minister of Finance, who outlines how the various programs and policies of the government will be financed and how the money will be raised. Other speakers by convention include the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, the Opposition spokesman on finance, and ministers selected by the government, as well as selected opposition speakers. The budget debate is closed by the Minister of Finance after all the presentations are made. Remember, the budget debate is usually followed by the sectoral debate. Here are a few more interesting facts about the Houses of Parliament. The mace in Parliament is the symbol of royal authority, and without it, neither house can meet or pass laws. According to Jamaica Information Service, the mace is an ornamented staff used in Jamaican parliamentary ceremonies and sessions. It represents the monarch's authority over such proceedings. It is present at every session, as Parliament is not properly constituted without its presence in the room. The mace is made of silver and is 5 feet 6 inches long. The mace was ordered by the House of Assembly in 1786. At the start of each sitting of Parliament, the mace is carried in by the Marshal ahead of the entry of the presiding officer, the Speaker of the House, or the President of the Senate. The mace is placed on the table of the House, where it remains until it is removed at the end of each session by the Marshal. The mace, however, must be placed under the table when the entire House meets as a committee to examine a bill in its second stage of review. In this instance, the presiding officer is functioning as a chairman. The removal of the mace by any person other than the Marshal is viewed as a sign of disrespect and contempt of Parliament. The proceedings will begin in a few moments.
Making their contributions during the debate on this motion to continue their speeches for 30 minutes, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that the items on the agenda be suspended and we move straight into the item public business. And on the public business, we start with the State of the Constituency debate, and this evening we will hear from the Member of Parliament for Kingston Eastern to start this Eastern Kingston, and Leader of Opposition Business in this Parliament.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I greet you. I greet my colleagues in this Honorable House and those, of course, who are watching this debate. I want to start, firstly, Madam Speaker, by acknowledging that we are observing Cancer Awareness Month, and in particular this week we are paying special attention to our women who have to go through the ravages of breast cancer, another form of cancer. And so I, in acknowledging them, making sure that I demonstrate by wearing my pin today, and we call upon the blessings of the Almighty to protect and guide our women, especially during these difficult times that they face. Madam Speaker, I am serving as Member of Parliament for the great constituency of Kingston East and Port Royal for 25 years. I have to acknowledge the tremendous support that I continue to get from my people. I want to acknowledge the support from my councillors, Mrs. Dobson and Mrs. Lewis, my executive members, families, and friends. And I know that they weren't going to be here today, but they are watching on my Facebook Live. Madam Speaker, as I explained to you before, I am not giving a written speech this year. Yes, and it is more so out of protest, and I'll explain why. Today I will speak from some brief notes that I did, because I was reviewing my speeches of the past. And I must say, Madam Speaker, I have to lament the way in which these debates are treated. And I want to go back to the original intention. And, you know, when I was in school, when I was doing literature, for example, they would say that we need to assess an author's work or a poet's work based on the intention, the objective that was established. And those times you can't interview the author nor the poets. You have to look at the work and make a determination as to, you know, as to what were the objectives of this. It is good that in relation to the constituency debates, we still have many people who have been here from the outset. And I recall that I was the leader of government business at the time. And there were a number of things that we wanted to achieve from these debates. First of all, when we were looking at the debates, we acknowledged that people were not paying attention enough to what we do inside here. Our speeches were too long, and in those days, the sectoral debate would go on for 2.5 hours, and so on. And we wanted to get something that could get the Jamaican people to focus a lot more on their business. And so this was one of the objectives of the constituency debate. We also recognized the futility in members trying to advocate for their constituencies in the Standing Finance Committee. Those were times when the Standing Finance Committee of Parliament, when we were meeting to deal with the budget, would go on for hours. We'll be here until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would object or comment on so many different lines in the budget. And it would mean nothing in the end. At the time, I was in government, and I know it would mean nothing in the end. So it was also to try to address that, where members felt that their concerns weren't being addressed. And thirdly, we acknowledged that there were so many constituents who were complaining that, first of all, the CDF was too small, so MPs couldn't do much with it, and that, in fact, so much of it was spent on social welfare stuff. and that there were certain big projects that needed to get the focus of the Consolidated Fund and the Ministry of Finance. So these debates were organized around this time in sync with the national budget call. Every year, the Ministry of Finance calls its agencies together and say, listen, submit to us your proposals for the budget. Similarly, we are being called during these debates in the same way. We are here as equals. So in these debates, there's no distinction between the Prime Minister and the member from Northwest St. Anne. We are all here because we come here equally elected by a group of people in a constituency. Madam Speaker, we departed from the Westminster tradition in relation to these debates by allowing the Speaker of the House to speak in a debate. This is unheard of. I mean, it's a tradition in the Westminster system that speakers get what they want, but they never advocate for it. In fact, in the UK, speakers are normally protected. People don't even contest against them because it's supposed to ensure your unbiased approach to the Parliament. But in these debates, the Speaker is allowed to make a presentation. Madam Speaker, I believe in light of what we have seen over the number of years, and I am not in any way distracting from some of the excellent presentations we have seen. In fact, I was speaking to a journalist today when I noted that my presentation today is entitled, Does the Constituency Debate Benefit Constituents? And the journalist was saying, well, for the first time she's hearing MPs and they're giving reports, some glowing on their stewardship and also speaking about special projects. And that is good, and probably we need to embrace some of that. But is that the reason for the constituency debates? And I say, based on the inception, based on all that has gone before, that is not so. The leader of, or the acting leader of government business has indicated that there is going to be a review of the debate to provide for more time, and I have no difficulty with that. But if we are going to be true to the original intent, we have to do much more than that. Madam Speaker, I find it offensive that the Ministry of Finance has not seen it fit to be present when the people's representatives speak. And for the acting leader of government business to say to me that they are watching from TV and so on, I find that grossly disrespectful. I think it is totally disrespectful. But also, Madam Speaker, the intent, and the member you just came in, the intent behind these debates was to influence the budget. So it is not only the Ministry of Finance who needs to be present, but there are some important ministries and agencies that also need to be present. Madam Speaker, apart from our lawmaking function as legislators, these debates provide a most important function for us as the people's representatives, and they should not be in any way undermined. And as I mentioned before, as we approach amending the standing orders, we need to make it a requirement that certain agencies of the state, especially the Ministry of Finance, be present. Be present. And more than that, Madam Speaker, there should be at the end of these debates a summary of the proposals that have been made by the people's representatives. And that those summary should also get the focus of the Ministry of Finance, and especially at the commencement of the budget, there ought to be a presentation from the minister on the proposals that came from Northwest St. Anne, Western St. Mary, a specific item to be addressed by the minister before we get into the details of the budget. That will give the type of primacy, the importance to what we here as the people's elected representative are doing inside here. Madam Speaker, otherwise this is going to continue to be a talk shop. It will continue to represent for many of us frustration and dissatisfaction, because the current practice where you go cap in hand to rely on a minister's benevolence cannot work. As kind as the ministers would be, I don't believe that is a proper functioning of our democracy. And there's further evidence of the unimportance of these debates. Every year, important recommendations are made regarding the role and effectiveness of the members in this chamber.
Members, I'm going to ask you to hear the member in silence. I will protect every member in here, but more so when the leader of government business is on his or her feet. I'm going to have them, and I'm going to do the same for the leader of opposition business. So please allow us to hear what is being said in the House this afternoon. I want us to think, and I want to remind each and every one of us in here, as we talk about the state of the children and the discipline. They are watching us, their teachers are watching, having children watch us, and we need to set an example. So please, we all have a chance to speak, and I want you to allow the leader of the opposition business to make his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I really don't take it as disrespect. I believe that people might be focused on other things, but I want to challenge you to focus on what I'm saying, because it could make the world of a difference with our effectiveness as members of Parliament. Last year, for example, Madam Speaker, there were some important proposals that were made. The member from East Central St. Andrew made some fundamental proposals, member from South East St. Anne, and in my own presentation there were some proposals made as to how we could make this chamber far more effective, and us as members of Parliament be able to realize far greater successes. In fact, there was a signal from the government that there would be some follow-up to these proposals last year. A year has passed and nothing has ensued. So, Madam Speaker, in reviewing these debates, I think, yes, let us increase the time. I had put 15 minutes so that we could zero in on those budget items, but I think we could incorporate the reports from members of Parliament, but we must get the government to focus on the people's request, and that they be taken into account when the budget is being formulated. Madam Speaker, the acting leader of government business has also given notice to the Parliament for a review of the standing orders in relation to questions and answers. Questions and answers play a crucial role in the functioning of our Parliament and our democracy. As I've said many times, Madam Speaker, though any member can ask questions, it is really an effective tool that the opposition uses to ensure government accountability. Unlike motions and bills that can be tabled by any one of us, once a question is tabled, you have to insist that the answers come after 21 days. If not, then the questioner is the person whose permission ought to be sought for there to be any delay. And as we had debated recently, those questions can be delegated to other ministers. And I know that we are about to review the standing orders, but we are going to be resolute that the existing rules remain sacrosanct, and nothing should be done that would impair the vibrancy and the authenticity of our democracy. Madam Speaker, I had also given notice that we intend to invoke Section 17B of the standing orders in relation to Prime Minister's question time. I was hoping that by now there would have been some exchange across the aisle as to the conduct of this particular standing order so that we can clarify how this new feature will be conducted. It is the view that these questions will relate to important national issues asked orally and is only subject to the Speaker's ruling on the matter of urgency. And next week is the second Tuesday of this month, so we expect to engage in that aspect of the standing orders. Then, Madam Speaker, in my brief address, I have regard to all the things that I have submitted in the past. I want to say we in the constituency of Kingston East and Port Royal have incorporated the use of technology in just about everything that we now do, and that has been spurred on by the ravages of COVID. I am very pleased that we were the first constituency to conduct our CDF consultation online. This is a requirement by the CDF, and they were very pleased to see that a consultation started on time online, and it had tremendous participation from our people. And also, we did for the first time our face-to-face online using my Facebook feature. Again, we had very good support from the people. But I want to address this issue of technology in our constituencies. And I too am grateful for the 3 free Wi-Fi centers. You're going to get more in my constituency. But, Madam Speaker, and I'm sorry that the Minister is not in the House, but I'm very concerned about the future of the Universal Service Fund, because the original aim, and again, I can speak with some acquaintances with that because I think I was around at the time. The original aim was not for us to have in various communities free Wi-Fi. The aim was for us to have free Wi-Fi throughout Jamaica. The aim was for Jamaica to become a veritable hotspot. So if you're traveling from Kingston to Montego Bay, public space, you should be able to have free Wi-Fi throughout. That was the original aim. And that was the thinking behind the fight that we had to go through to get the fund established. Yes, and the member recalls the fight. We had to impose a tax on international voice telephony terminating in Jamaica. We didn't pay the tax. It was imposed on people calling Jamaica. And some people were very upset that we were doing so. And for 3 days, Jamaica was locked off because the international carriers protested. They shut off the circuits. Many of you are too young to remember this. But for 3 days, those circuits were shut down, and the opposition was calling for the minister's head. But we didn't blink, and they had to turn on back the circuits after 3 days because we were able to justify that Jamaicans should have access, should not be in any way not be able to have full broadband access and to be on the same level as people from anywhere in the world. So out of that, over $14 billion was generated in about 5 years. At the time, that money went straight to the Krystal fund. And it wasn't until the law was changed in 2013 to enable the USF to have its own accounts that those funds now revert or go to the USF accounts. But those $14 billion have not yet gone back to Universal Service Fund. And we had justified this imposition of the chess on the basis that it's going to be used to enable Jamaicans to have access to broadband. And I'm therefore calling upon the Ministry of Finance, in light of the fact that the USF does not now have enough money to do more. You don't need, you want 10 Wi-Fi facility in your constituency. 3 is not enough. Yes. No, in your constituency, you have about 40 communities. You need 40. But the USF doesn't have the resources because a lot of that money was sequestered. And, Madam Speaker, even now as we speak, the funds that do come into the USF, those funds are not enough because the importance of voice telephony that generated these funds has dwindled. And people are no longer making, as they used to do, voice telephone calls in the rate and at the cost that they used to. But many of them are using free WhatsApp calls, so we're not attracting, we're not getting the revenues. And so it is now time for us to review that and to impose assess on some of the data services. But we must do so that we do not disincentivize or we do not continue to support those businesses that are involved in data services. So it's a tricky road, but the funds, we do need the funds to get the USF to be able to be viable. And instead of imposing the tax on voice, because not much money will come that way, it should be on data services, but not on those services that relate particularly to business. So those are my proposal, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to touch briefly now on some of the issues that I have raised in these debates over the number of years that still remain unanswered, going nowhere. The first one has to do with Harbour View, Harbour Heights drainage. We have had this major drainage problem that every time there is a significant rainfall, there is flooding. The government, through the Minister of Finance 4 years ago, and repeated every year when we sit at the Standing Finance Committee, have made pledges to fund promises. In fact, 3 years ago, $70 million was found in the budget, and I eyeballed the minister, he's not in the chamber now, along with his chief technical person, and they say, see there, $70 million. It is going to be attached to the South Coast Development Roadway being done by China Harbour, and that will be done as a priority project. Not $1 has been spent so far, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, the situation is dire. If we were to get a significant rain event, those people on Harbour Drive and in the Harbour Heights community, and we do share a boundary with the member from East Rural St. Andrew, those people are going to be severely affected, not only with their houses being washed away, but, God forbid, Madam Speaker, lives could be lost as a result. And this has been outstanding for 4 years. Commitments have been given for 4 years, every year. And it's going to take major destruction, deaths, for some funds to be provided by the government. We can't wait any longer, Madam Speaker. And that's the reason why next year I won't be participating in these debates if that problem is not solved. And I promise you that. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Tourism last year promised me that this long outstanding matter of enabling Windward Road to really become that era that welcomes people from the Norman Manley Airport into a major township. And that the project that was envisaged some time ago of creating an elegant corridor along Windward Road up to Mountain View, some will go along Windward Road up to Ellison Road. It was a project that was properly fashioned, budgeted. I took the people into a room and we went and saw in video form the new Windward Road, all electrical wires underground, the facade. No, not true. Not true. No, but the project started, Madam Speaker. The project started. Yes. The project, no, that's not true. The project started by your government. And I've already acknowledged my thanks to the Prime Minister. Right? So, no, that's not true. Madam Speaker, I was just about to commend the government, you know. I was just about to commend the government. Because after appealing to the Prime Minister, we got the first part of the road fully rehabilitated, not patching, fully rehabilitated from Rockfort to Mountain View. We got the road fully rehabilitated. But it remains for 3 years now, because it should have gone up to Mountain View and then extend to Ellison Road, Windward Road. So what we have now is we have a fine piece of road from Mountain View Avenue to Rockfort, but the rest is terrible. So your visitors come and they're driving and, oh, the road is so nice. And as they cross over Mountain View, the same road, we have an unfinished project. The Minister of Tourism has promised me that they are going to find the funds. And I am asking for the last time. Let us finish from Mountain View Avenue to Ellison Road. Let people who travel into the city, they land at now on the airport, many of them take the back road. And it's not the back road that people, no, this is a different back road, right? We want people though to intermingle with the residents along Windward Road. And I'm making that submission again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is not all gloom and doom, because when the Port Royal port development was envisaged and the Port Authority met with me, we put down certain benchmarks, we put down certain requirements, because it would have been unfair for visitors to come in a lovely facility and then to be met upon by frown faces of the people who weren't having proper water, or sewage was overflowing, and electrical wiring not in place. So we dealt with the electrical wiring that has been fixed. And I'm pleased, Madam Speaker, that as we speak, the sewerage that was provided for the port is going to be extended to enable the entire town of Port Royal to benefit from that. And also, contract has now been awarded. Yes, no, we have to fight for it. It would not have happened without the fight. The port would not have been built without this. And I'm so happy, Madam Speaker, that the Cabinet recently approved contracts for new water mains to be established from airport into Port Royal. So the people of Port Royal will finally have proper water facilities. Good representation. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are some projects that we are pursuing, and we intend to have them as part of legacy as you move on. And the Minister of Sports is quite aware of one of them. We are continuing to rely on her office for the consultation and for support as we pursue 2 stadiums, one in Rockfort and the other on Windward Road to facilitate Camperdown High School. Madam Speaker, the acting House Leader is otherwise engaged now, but I think she will recall when she saw plans, she was very impressed by such plans. We have developed for the Rockfort Sports Complex a facility that will stage
Madam Speaker, I now ask that
10 minutes.
that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to continue his speech to its conclusion. Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it, member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I did say that I wasn't making a speech today. Yes, I'm just speaking from some rough notes. You know, I started the speech last night, no, 2 weeks ago, completed it, and when I looked and compared with my other speeches over the years, they were almost identical. Because, yes, and so that I'm not reading it today. But going back to that sports complex, Rockfort Football Club, we were once the pride and joy of the Major League. And we're still in that category, but we want to give the people of Rockfort a facility that is much more than just a football field. We want the women to be able to play netball. We also have in the foothills a design for an amphitheater. Yes, and we have all of those designs. In fact, we also have a boxing ring where all of them guys who believe them bad put on a gun, come in the ring, and let us see who better than who, right? So all of those plans are in place, designs done, and we're looking for support. We did get some private sector interest recently, but whenever people hear of violence in the area, they back away. And my appeal to my people to put down the badmanism, put away the gun. Let us try to live in peace and harmony, because there's no oil in Rockfort. So this turf war don't make sense. And those people who are funding the violence, and those funds are not coming from Jamaica. There's no money here to give them to buy guns. Those funds are coming from overseas. People who used to live in the area, we are asking them to stop it. Send instead a sewing machine. Send instead a block making machine. Send some tablets. But stop it, because from our being member of parliament, and my colleague from Central Kingston now, he's feeding it. We have been plagued by crime and violence, unnecessary wanton killing of people who grew up together, but just can't resolve conflicts as they arise. So, Minister, that is a project, and I'm going to use that facility to try and see if we can build back greater social harmony in the community. And then Warwick Hills. I mentioned this to the Minister of Tourism, and the TPDCO people are now on board, Port Authority as well. Warwick Hill is famous for bad things. But can you imagine this walking trail, hiking trail, that will enable our visitors and our people alike to hike up to the hill? Yes, it is an amazing view. No, let us do it now. Let us invest now. It's an amazing view for people to walk up from the bottom up to the top of the hill. And in fact, I believe we can put cable cars up there and a zip line eventually. We can make Kingston into a tourism destination, similarly to Mobe, which is now having greater violence. Okay. And on that note, Madam Speaker, I regret to announce that yesterday we had a murder in Port Royal. Port Royal is the most peaceful place in this country. And so far this year, due to, I would say, domestic matters, we have had 2 persons killed. And we have to cauterize that immediately, because what will attract people to Kingston is Port Royal. It's Port Royal. And I'm just hoping that we can get over this. The perpetrator will be brought to justice quickly, and that there will be no retaliation. That is my hope and my plea. So, Madam Speaker, as I close this very brief presentation, without detracting from the presentations that have been made, and there have been some very good presentations in this House, I think we have to go back to the original intent of these debates to enable us as the people's representatives to feel justified in coming here year after year, to make appeals, to make submissions for projects, for them to be properly funded. Well, first of all, for attention to be given, and for them to be analyzed and then properly funded. That was the original intent of these debates, and if those objectives are not being met, then, Madam Speaker, this is my final time out there. I want to thank you all for your patience, and may the good people of Kingston, East and Port Royal continue to have progress. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, yes, as someone said, a very sober presentation from the leader of the opposition business and Member of Parliament for East Kingston and Port Royal. Madam Speaker, the next presentation will be made by Ms. Krystal Lee, Member of Parliament and Northwest.
Members, I want, before the Member of Parliament for St. Ann Northwestern speaks, to thank the member from Kingston Eastern for a measured and useful and insightful presentation. Thank you very much. And now we will hear from the Member of Parliament from Northwest St. Ann. Long time.
Madam Speaker, permission to speak from a seat that is not my own.
Granted.
Madam Speaker, I remain thankful and humbled to be given this opportunity to rise in the Houses of Parliament for another time to make my contribution to the state of the constituency debate. I give thanks and glory to God in the highest for giving me his protection, strength, and direction in these most critical times of my journey as a young Member of Parliament. I thank and commend the most honorable Prime Minister, Andrew Michael Holness, and my party leader for his ardent support and exceptional leadership. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues sitting in both houses. I acknowledge you, Madam Speaker, or Deputy Speaker, as you continue to lead with fairness and impartiality. I would also like to recognize the Clerk of the House and the rest of her team here at the Houses of Parliament for their continuous hard work. Madam Speaker, I am grateful for the continuous support and industriousness of my 4 councillors and councillor caretaker. I thank the dedicated and hard-working members of my office team, management team, executive members, and party workers. I thank my family, friends, well-wishers, and my colleagues that I work with in the private sector for their continued love and support. I remain grateful and with much humility, Madam Speaker, to be given the opportunity to serve my wonderful people of St. Ann Northwestern. I want to take this opportunity to reassure them that I am working to the best of my ability to give them the best representation in which they deserve. Though the journey may be challenging, I will certainly continue to listen to the concerns of our people, be as accessible as best as I possibly can, and continue to lobby hard for what will create a better life for all. Madam Speaker, we have made significant strides this year as it relates to road and infrastructural development. All commitments mentioned in my presentation last year have either been completed or in the process towards execution. We have completed the following road projects: road rehabilitations of sections of Back Salem, Islington to Bengal, Hampton, Tatchfield, Keith, implementation of drainage system and paving at the Bamboo Library, implementation of drainage system in Salem, and the building of the retaining wall and river training at Sleepy Hollow. This includes the drainage improvement at Runaway Bay to increase the runoff of stormwater in the Runaway Bay Square. Madam Speaker, rehabilitation of the Milford Road in Orange Hill is currently being done and should be completed within a few days. Procurement process is far advanced for the roadway in the Lewis community. Yes. Through the Constituency Development Fund, sections of the Egypt Road at the Yorkcastle High School will be rehabilitated soon. Through the Tourism Enhancement Fund, sections of the Mount Pleasant to Mount Olivet roadway will be rehabilitated in short order. Madam Speaker, our diligent Minister of Local Government and Rural Development has committed to rehabilitating sections of the roadway in the community of Tricey, leading to Knapdale. This project will directly impact the lives of over 1,000 residents living in that community. Madam Speaker, I am extremely elated to announce today that the Runaway Bay to Brownstone roadway was sent out to tender 2 Saturdays ago. The people of Centre and Northwestern have been waiting for decades for the rehabilitation of this major roadway. This roadway, Madam Speaker, goes to the heart of the constituency, and that allows and links the northern part of the island to the southern areas. Madam Speaker, I want to make it categorically clear that there were no previous financial commitments in the pipeline when I just went in as a Member of Parliament to rehabilitate this roadway. The commitment came when I made representation and the sedulous Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation with the responsibility of works visited the constituency last year on July 21. The Minister made several commitments on that tour of the constituency. Most have already been addressed, and others are in process. On behalf of my constituents, I wish to say we thank you, Minister, for your commitment and diligence. Madam Speaker, we have major traffic build-up in the constituency across the rest of the coast in St. Anne and the constituency. As development continues to rapidly take place across the corridor, we are happy and thankful to learn of the plans the government will be undertaking to solve the traffic issues on the North Coast Highway that will add capacity that will make commute safe and efficient for many years to come. Madam Speaker, the issue is this: the daily capacity of the North Coast Highway through the parish of St. Anne is approximately 10,640 vehicles. However, the capacity of the roadway has been exceeded. Data collected last year shows that the average annual daily traffic between Greenwood and Discovery Bay is approximately 16,100 vehicles. The average annual daily traffic between Salem and Miami Bay is approximately 21,000 vehicles. This creates a significant capacity deficit, Madam Speaker, in both segments, resulting in the traffic. As announced by the Most Honourable Prime Minister, the public investment project will involve the construction of an additional 2 lanes covering 60 kilometers from Sea Castles in St. James to Miami Bay in St. Anne. Madam Speaker, though this project is being pursued, it is also important for us to consider other safety measures on the roadway. A feasibility study has been carried out by NWA as it relates to the implementation of a traffic light at Discovery Bay by the intersection that leads to Brownstown. The study revealed that there is the need for a traffic light in that area. And Madam Speaker, we hope that based on the history of accidents taking place at that spot, it will be treated as a matter of priority.
It will be.
Madam Speaker, there is much more to be desired of our road networks, including main roads, parochial roads, and also roads in housing developments. This shows how deplorable the state of the road networks were across the constituency up to September 2020. Madam Speaker, estimates were done on the following roads: Mount Zion to Sturgetown via Landover Mountain, Discovery Bay to Orange Valley, and sections of Orange Hill by officers by the NWA. NWA funding. Madam Speaker, this will be a pending funding for these projects to come through. The Prairie to Bamboo Road, Bamboo to Brownstown, Brownstown to Wilberforce, Brownstown to Retreat, Discovery to Stewarttown, Old Folly to Farmtown and Betheltown, Old Road to Sturgetown. Hold on. Jack's Lodge, hold on. Stand Fast, Wesley Crescent, Goshen, Minard Hill, Scarlett Hall, Salem to Hampstead, Kensington, Summerhill. Hold on, no. We're not doing them. No. Hold on. Just naming a few, Madam Speaker, are all in dire need of rehabilitation.
Where is the name? Do road, Krystal.
Madam Speaker, I would like to bring to the attention of the Parliament an issue that doesn't only exist in Centre and Northwestern, but also across other constituencies as well. The long-standing issue of deplorable road conditions and other infrastructure within housing developments. This includes developments that are done by the Housing Agency of Jamaica, the National Housing Trust, private developers, and to a lesser extent, the Urban Development Corporation. While I'm mindful, Madam Speaker, that the NHT has embarked on a national program to rehabilitate roads and other infrastructure in developments that was built by them, there is a lacuna in our development approval process. What obtains now, Madam Speaker, is that when these roads deteriorate and fall into a state of disrepair, there is an expectation that the political representatives ought to effect repairs to these roads when they are neither classified as a parochial road or an NWA road. Yes. In my constituency, Madam Speaker, the residents in the communities of Bel Air, Meadows, Cardiff Hall, Mount Edgecombe, Seacrest, Bridgewater, just to name a few, have been struggling with these issues for many years. Madam Speaker, whereas we welcome the developments in the constituency, we are calling for a transitional arrangement to be introduced as part of the conditions of approvals for large housing developments.
Excellent call.
In the first instance, a clear timeline for the completion of development ought to be set and be adhered to. Secondly, developers, whether private or government developers, are to maintain these roads for 24 months, during which time the roads are to be transferred to the municipal corporation. Madam Speaker, for developments that are currently having these problems developed by the HAJ and UDC, I am calling for them to roll out similar programs to that of the NHT, to rehabilitate these scheme roads and other infrastructure, and thereafter transfer them to the municipal corporation.
Good call.
Madam Speaker, for those roadways within private developments, recognizing that some of these developers have moved on, no longer in business or deceased, I recommend that the municipal corporation, in a structured way, perhaps by virtue of the age of these developments, take over these roads. With this, it will set the platform for government resources to be used over time in these developments, whether through the CDF, the municipal corporation, or other agencies of government. Madam Speaker, this is a matter I have taken keen interest in, as I have seen the suffering of constituents who have bought into these developments. A lot of these persons have their titles and they are paying their property taxes.
Yes.
Upon completion of the research and consultation, I will be tabling a motion in this honourable House so that this matter can be debated.
Well done. Well done.
Madam Speaker, I know our government has the very best interests of heart for our people, and will seek to solve this problem which has existed for decades. Madam Speaker, like many other rural constituencies, the water woes in Central and Northwesterns remain a real concern to us. Though we are making steps in the right direction, over 60% of our communities still has a shortage or no piped and potable water. All the projects announced last year in my presentations have been making progress, Madam Speaker. However, it is rather slow, and this is primarily due to budgetary restraints and delays in the supply of material and equipment from overseas. Madam Speaker, the Rosemount water supply upgrade is underway. Pumps have been procured, new pipes are being laid, tank has been procured and should be erected soon. This will impact the communities in the areas of Discovery Bay, Bridgewater, Primrose Hill, and to facilitate the extension to Mount Pleasant and Mount Olivet. Based on the upgrading work, we will be able to supply existing residents, Madam Speaker, adequately and reliably, and to accommodate the future developments in these areas. Due to supply chain issues, we have not yet completed Phase 1 of the Minard Water System project. Once the pumps and motors have been delivered, upgrading works will commence, and thereafter we will move to Phase 2, depending on the availability of funding. This will be to address the pipeline issues with numerous leaks within the water network. Enough water will then be available to extend to the communities of Philadelphia, Knapdale, Aberdeen, and sections of Orange Hill currently without water. The National Water Commission has committed to bringing water supply to Enfield and Retreat, impacting over 1,500 residents. The procurement for the 4 kilometers of pipes and fittings has already started. Madam Speaker, over 7,000 residents across the community of Queenite, Content, Keith, Lawrence Park, Homecastle, Retirement, Flamstead, Brown Peace, and Adnagrass are eagerly awaiting the completion of the Queenite water system. This is a joint project between the NWC and Rural Water Supply. The update on this project is that the well has been completed and the approvals have been granted by the Water Resources Authority.
That's good.
Madam Speaker, the Tickets water system is still being worked on by the Rural Water Supply. We have over 2,000 residents anxiously awaiting its completion. Work continues to replace the leaking pipelines, construct concrete covering for the reservoir, and to procure the solar pump. This project has also slowed down, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are being hopeful that the Freehill Water Project, which will impact over 1,900 residents investigated by the Rural Water Supply, will be given some priority for the upcoming financial year. We are working with the NWC and the Central Municipal Corporation to find a solution to bring piped water to Mount Ararat and Mines. Rural Water is looking into providing a tank for the community of Mount Zion, where there is an unreliable water system due to insufficient water being in the spring during drought months. Yes. Madam Speaker, we are truly hoping that there will be no further delays as it relates to the Green Park to Bamboo Water System project. This project is funded by the Caribbean Development Bank and will impact the lives, Madam Speaker, of over 25,000 residents across the parish. Madam Speaker, this parish has been conceptualized for many years now. The people continue to suffer with no piped water and the unreliability of trucked water. They have become impatient on this matter regarding not having this basic yet precious commodity that should be accessible to all. Madam Speaker, now that the design is almost completed, we are making a special request to our Minister of Finance and the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation with the responsibility of water to help the people of St. Ann by prioritizing this project and let us make it a reality. Madam Speaker, all 23 government-operated schools in the Quality Education Circle were successfully opened for the new school term. Despite the challenges of the learning loss due to COVID-19, I am proud to report that the top-performing students in the parish of St. Ann for PEP results is from St. Ann Northwestern, the Servite Primary School. Madam Speaker, due to the growth in population in the constituency, primarily caused by the availability of new job opportunities in construction and tourism, as well as the increasing numbers of housing development, the constituency will require additional physical spaces in our schools. We are currently facing challenges in this regard, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the York Castle High School currently has over 280 students in its sixth form program. The school has also unveiled a slew of new programs over the past year. The increase in enrollment and the introduction of new programs has created a need for additional classroom, labs, and workspaces. We are working together to build out these new spaces. However, whatever can be granted towards this initiative will be greatly appreciated, Minister.
Yes, the Minister always listens.
Madam Speaker, the Discovery Bay High School is operating on the compound of the Discovery Bay Primary School. Ideally, the school needs to relocate to ensure that the facility is adequate for the secondary program and very soon the sixth form pathway program. Currently, the ministry is undergoing pre-contracting works for the construction of additional classroom spaces to accommodate the various cohorts of students at its current location. The board has located lands at Minard, which is in proximity, and is awaiting the Ministry of Education and Youth to start the building process for the school's new state-of-the-art home. Madam Speaker, the Brownstown High School remains on shift with over 2,000 students enrolled. The school requires approximately 18 additional classrooms to transition from the shift system to the whole-day system. However, we are of the view that if Discovery Bay High School is relocated to the lands at Minard, this could also alleviate the burden from the Brownstown High School.
Right.
Nonetheless, the school would still need additional classroom, labs, sanitary conveniences, workshops, and office spaces. Madam Speaker, the Brownstown Model Basic is slated to transition to a government standalone infant school in January 2023. The current structure will require some modification for it to meet the standards of the Early Childhood Commission. Just last month, I brought the leadership of an overseas charity there, and they were granted a donation on the spot. However, with much to do, additional support is surely needed. The Minister of Education and Youth has in her plans to visit our constituency soon, Madam Speaker, and we are anticipating favorable and grand announcements as it relates to the development of our schools. After all, St. Ann Northwestern holds the capital of education for St. Ann and neighboring parishes.
Right.
The attention is well needed and deserved. Madam Speaker, we continue to be thankful for the National Broadband and Community Public Wi-Fi initiatives. We had our launch of our second community public Wi-Fi in Brownstown a few months ago. All infrastructure is in place to launch our third community public Wi-Fi spot in Mount Zion, and we will be receiving our fourth Wi-Fi spot area in the community of Tickets. The Universal Service Fund will be providing the Addison Park Computer Laboratory with 20 new computers by the end of November. I want to note that currently the lab has been down for many years, Madam Speaker, due to the computers being obsolete. So this is a big deal, because what this means now is that our customer service courses, call center courses, coding courses, and other computer-related classes will be taught. Let me publicly commend and thank the Minister of Energy, Science and Technology and the team at the Universal Service Fund for their continued hard work and for the financial support that was given to the York Castle High School robotics team in representing Jamaica in the World Robotics Championship in Texas in March. Madam Speaker, the update on the Muir House Infant Department project, which will be to rehabilitate the play area and to be funded by the Jamaica Bauxite Institute as one of their 45th anniversary projects, is far advanced. Work should begin before the end of this year. Through the CDF, we were able to contribute towards the educational upliftment of many. Over 600 students received book vouchers, 35 students tablet devices, 55 tertiary grants. With additional support from charities, we provided over 2,500 backpack and school supplies, contributed over $500,000 to the development of 2 new classroom spaces at the Brownstown Infant School. This will be able to assist them in getting certified by the Early Childhood Commission. Through sponsorship, Madam Speaker, we facilitated over 800 back-to-school medicals free of cost to the parents. Madam Speaker, we endeavor to meet the welfare of our people, those in need of assistance and support with funeral grants, purchasing of medical supplies, medical services, housing assistance, and food supply. Madam Speaker, with all this being said, I am in support of my colleagues in asking for a review of the CDF.
Here, 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 here. That's right, that's right.
The need for support in various areas of human and infrastructural development remains relatively high. In most cases in my office, we are only able to meet approximately 5 to 10% of the requests that comes in each year. And Madam Speaker, in looking at it, the CDF was developed through extensive research and policy. 15 years ago, it was conceptualized that members of parliaments would be allocated $40 million to assist in their community development activities. Fast forward to now, Madam Speaker. It is unconceivable that $20 million, which is half of the amount, would be able to cover what was conceptualized then. Madam Speaker, it would mean that we are able to do less, and we're confined to doing less than what was being done.
Yes. Good, very good.
Madam Speaker, I would like to thank the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development for the Paint the City project in the Brownstown area. The town is looking good with the murals and the facelift and renovations to the market, Madam Speaker. And it is well appreciated by all.
Absolutely.
Ministers committed to the renovation of the car park center. This is in dire need of repair, and so it was a relief to the taximen, passengers and vendors there when they heard of this project to come. Madam Speaker, Brownstown remains one of the largest towns in St. Anne, with over 3,000 persons commuting through the town on a daily basis, being the main town for many. Madam Speaker, the reality is that the town is in serious need of a redesign, and which entails structured town planning and development.
That's right. That's right.
The plan should not only comprise of diverting the traffic by creating bypasses and improved parking spaces, but it would also make sense for us at this time to investigate the expansion of the town to create more room for businesses and other entities. Madam Speaker, there are vacant lands, both private and government-owned, from Brownstown heading to Orange Valley and from Orange Valley heading to Runaway Bay that can be considered for expansion. Madam Speaker, the Brownstown Health District is eagerly awaiting the development of the new health center in Brownstown. The current structure cannot adequately meet the needs of the population, Madam Speaker. Last year, over 19,500 patients utilized the services at the Brownstown Health Center. It is with this in mind, we welcome this project wholeheartedly and thank the Minister of Health and Wellness and the State Minister of Health and Wellness. All the workers at the Northeast Regional Health Authority and the rest of the team from the Ministry of Health for prioritizing this project. Madam Speaker, this design concept has been finalized. The no objection letter from the St. Anne Municipal Corporation has been secured for a temporary location at the Liberty Valley and Country Club to be used for the health center during demolition and reconstruction. Stakeholder engagement sessions are expected to be conducted over the next 8 months to sensitize the public and respond to any concerns that may arise. Madam Speaker, we continue to lobby and push towards the concept of building a new health center in Runaway Bay to become a reality. We are happy that steps are being taken towards this goal, as the issue of the existing health center being inadequate for the population it serves remains a point of major concern to all of us. The hope is that the project development will be done during the 2023-2024 financial year. Madam Speaker, the beauty and geographical location of our constituency continues to make us ideal for tourism. We have the best blue and crystal clear waters at the suited temperatures, along with the lush and exotic greenery tied into the panoramic views from the hills. We are the perfect destination on the coast. Madam Speaker, tourism is ever expanding in St. Anne Northwestern. We are anticipating the development of 3 additional hotels soon. The new Secrets Resorts in Richmond, the expansion of the Bahia Principe and the Sandals Beaches Resort. Yes. We continue to see more Airbnbs and villas being built in the constituency. This is consistent overall, with Jamaica being the fastest growing Caribbean destination.
Yes, that's right.
A new tour in Mount Pleasant named the One in Level Farm Cottages is scheduled to be opened in December 2022. We continue to work towards the Sturgestown Cultural Heritage Tour. This tour, Madam Speaker, is a perfect combination of culture, history, scenery, and adventure. We have the most unique caves, exciting hiking trails, the Malice Spring, which is said to be the reason the people in Sturgestown lives the longest in the entire island, because they drink from the Malice Spring, and other interesting features. Many thanks to the Tourism Product Development Company for funding and implementing the repainting of the Wall of Fame at the school wall in Sturgestown. This, Madam Speaker, will form a vital part of the tour. Madam Speaker, with these developments and opportunities in tourism, we will certainly be preparing our constituents to be employable. Our people remain the most treasured attraction, and their development is most important for any other form of development to be successful. We welcome these developments. We welcome these developments because it is the clearest indication of growth, development, and prosperity. However, Madam Speaker, wherever opportunities exist, particularly in relation to employment, it is of my belief that for constituents, a protocol be developed for them to be given first priority of employment, having regards to their qualifications, competence, and experience.
Only fair.
Madam Speaker, Flavors Beach in Runaway Bay will be developed by TPDCO. Funds are already earmarked for this project. Therefore, once the design is finalized, the process will be accelerated to execution. Madam Speaker, TPDCO is currently implementing the Old Folly Beach Park project, which is also included in the beautification near the Bengal Bridge on both ends. This project is coming on quite nicely, Madam Speaker, and already the park is being used and appreciated by locals and visitors. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Minister of Tourism and the team at TPDCO for ensuring that our section of St. Anne is a part of the development in tourism and our coastlines are being beautified. Madam Speaker, we have been reassured that as it relates to the cleaning and debushing of our corridors, we should be seeing much more improvement within the next few months. The team has started, Madam Speaker, and we are hoping that the stretch is maintained going forward so that safety, cleanliness, and beauty will prevail. Madam Speaker, we were able to assist over 330 farmers with fertilizers. We have provided assistance for close to 100 poultry farmers in the form of poultry feed, day-old broiler birds, and medication. My office not only provided input, but worked closely with RADA with the training of beneficiaries of the proper management and use of these inputs in their respective enterprises. Cattle production is a thriving business in my constituency, Madam Speaker, and as such, we purchased close to 5 animals as part of the herd improvement program that we hope to expand. Madam Speaker, a reliable source of water is an important factor in agricultural production. Through the Productive Incentive Program and CDF, we have assisted 30 farmers with irrigation apparatus. As part of the predial larceny management and creating awareness of RADA functions, we have conducted mass farmer registration in various communities. Through the CDF, we have beautifully repainted and done repairs to the Fisherman's Beach House and the vending area on the Salem Fisherman's Beach in April of this year. And I would like to thank the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries for his support to our farmers so far and to a greater extent the constituency. And we are looking forward to even making a greater impact in the years to come for both our farmers and fishermen. Madam Speaker, infrastructural work on some of our community playing fields and sports complexes.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to continue her presentation to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches.
Members, the question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete her presentation. Those in favor?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. Madam Speaker, infrastructural work on some of our community playing fields and sports complexes has begun to take place. We have developed a multi-purpose court and fenced around it at the Discovery Bay playing field. The project to redevelop and fence the multi-purpose court at Addison Park Sports Complex has started yesterday. These courts will be able to facilitate netball, volleyball, and basketball. I would like to thank the Sports Development Foundation for funding the fencing of the Discovery Bay Court. Yes. And I am looking forward, Madam Speaker, to have our distinguished Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports to join us in the ribbon cutting and handing over of these two facilities before the end of the year.
By the way, you must invite Dayton. You need to invite Dayton.
Madam Speaker, we have also rendered and painted the stands for Jamaica 60 at the Addison Park Sports Complex. That's right. This project started on Labor Day, and I'm hoping that when Minister visits, we will get additional support needed to develop the facility. It being a central and key location to over 100 communities.
Lisa, be presidential now.
Madam Speaker, we will be building soon a training center with a bathroom at the Salem playing field. The first phase of the project entails the construction of the infrastructure and will be funded by the TPD Spruce Up Funds and the CDF. The second phase, Madam Speaker, will include outfitting a section of the training center with computers. Yes. Madam Speaker, we are working with TEF to develop the playing field at Mines. The project will be underway early next year. The first phase will be to level the playing field area and to fence it around.
Level the field.
Madam Speaker, we have hit the ground running in sports and community development. We have partnered with Southwest St. Anne and we're currently hosting our Champions of Champions Football League. We have 40 teams participating. This league was started in June and will end in the middle of November. We have ensured to enroll with the St. Anne Football Federation, and this will not only be good for the discipline of the competition, but also higher quality games and standards.
That's right.
As we draw closer to the quarterfinals, officials will be looking at the talents that are being displayed and present opportunities for growth in the sport. Madam Speaker, also this summer, we hosted our Reggae Talent Expo. This event was well supported and served its purpose in highlighting our local talents within our communities. Give exposure and experience to these talents, Madam Speaker. Provide airtime, studio opportunities, as well as to reward top performances. We have a lot of talent in Central and Northwestern bursting at the seams to be heard and encouraged towards greatness. It was even said that the quality of some of our performances were so good that they could have joined the national competition, and so we will be encouraging them, Minister, to do so. Madam Speaker, we will be hosting our Grand Gospel Concert this year on December 10. We will be having professional performances as well as our local gospel artists. Madam Speaker, this concert will not only give God the highest praises, but also to uplift the community spirit and togetherness, support our community talents by providing this platform for their exposure, and to promote economic life within Brownstown and its environs. Madam Speaker, we have started our Pondy Corner meetings with various agencies and stakeholders. We have hosted 3 meetings so far in the communities of Lewis, Old Folly, and Mount Olivet, and Mount Pleasant. Our 4th meeting will be held in Muirhouse next week. These meetings are quite spirited and interactive, Madam Speaker, as we learn from our residents and listen to their concerns. They also learn from the various entities and become more aware and knowledgeable about specific functions, roles, and responsibilities. Madam Speaker, we have been making good strides as it relates to development of housing solutions in our constituency. The Savannah Housing Project for middle-income earners in Bel Air, which is phase 2 of the Vistas, has started. Yes. Madam Speaker, the Minard Estate Housing Development Project with 650 housing units, which is to be done by the NHT, is currently being undertaken by the pre-qualified developers to develop the land.
That's right.
Proposals are expected by the end of November 2022. Madam Speaker, we have several private developers who are investing in building housing solutions at different types and price points. We have condominiums such as the Azure, which will be the tallest building in the area, the Paradisiac Beach Club with villas, apartments, and standalone homes to 211 eco-friendly homes to be built at the Mahogany Hill development in Chester, just to name a few. Madam Speaker, I am proud to be a part of a government that truly cares. I commend the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister and Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation, for establishing the Hope New Social Housing Program in 2018. And I thank the Hope team for their commitment towards making sure that these goals are met. Madam Speaker, I have had the privilege of participating in ribbon cuttings of 4 houses built through this program. For recipients who are vulnerable or fire victims within the communities of Goshen, Retirement, Sturgetown, and Clayground. Madam Speaker, these houses that are built, they are built to the highest quality standards, yet affordable. It is times like these, Madam Speaker, when the burden of being a member of Parliament feels lighter. When you look and see the joy, the pride, the appreciation on the faces of the beneficiaries, knowing very well that the hope that we talk about has become a reality for them, and it will spark the light of hope to others. Madam Speaker, we have, as a constituency management team, consulted and sought to meet the needs of our constituents. We anticipate as an evolving development team. I say evolving as we pull in emerging young leaders to continue to tap into the energy of our people to realize their dreams of development, build wealth and prosperity, secure our families' health, assured also of the handover of legacy for our next generation. Madam Speaker, I will continue to stay focused and put my very best effort in serving the people of St. and Northwestern well in every opportune moment. And as Galatians 6 verses 9 says, Madam Speaker, in our good book, amen. And let us not be weary in doing well, amen. In well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Amen. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well done. Well done, well done, well done, well done, well done, well done, well done.
It's life, you believe if you only believe. And in order to achieve what you need, you can never give up. You can never give up. And this hope that leads me holding on. And this hope that makes me carry on. Couldn't have made it alone. I got a wonderful life, 2 kids of my own, with a strong foundation that was carved in stone. And my mama for the love that made my house a home. And me wonder sometime if this was meant to be. All this for a humble little guy like me. And all I ever really wanted was a family to teach my kids the same value that she gave to me. It's a sun every time till the tides are high. And the road need a rocket, you could cry, just never give up. You can never give up. In this life you believe if you only believe, and in order to achieve what you need, you can never give up. You can never give up. And this hope that keeps me holding on.
Madam Speaker.
And this hope that makes me carry on.
Madam Speaker, excellent presentation by both members, Madam Speaker, and a lively end to the presentation made by the member from St. Anne. So, Madam Speaker, I now ask that the debate be suspended.
Just before we ask for the suspension of the debate, I want to say as Speaker that I want to thank the member from Northwestern St. Anne for, and I am sincere about this, a true snapshot of the members' stewardship in this constituency. I live in Northwest St. Anne. I go to the market in Brownstown every week. I talk to the people there, and everything she has said this evening is true, and we are all happy with her stewardship in St. Anne. True. I mentioned to her this afternoon one road that somebody asked for, and there's always room for more to be done, but she continues to serve, and her stewardship is well appreciated. And with that, I ask members for the suspension of the constituency debate for this afternoon. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of items, statements by ministers through to presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Members, the question before the House is that we have the recommittal of items, starting with statements from ministers. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to advise this Honourable House
Member, permission is granted for you to speak first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I look forward to the new Parliament when the issues of Mike and other things would be resolved. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to advise this Honourable House that the long-awaited bail bill is being tabled today. It's been tabled today. Madam Speaker, permit me to acknowledge the presence of the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Mr. Wayne O. Robertson. It was my expectation that this bill would have been here sooner, Madam Speaker, but the review and turnaround at different stages of the process were longer than I reasonably expected and anticipated. And if the robust discussion generated during the review before tabling is anything to go by, then I expect even greater discussion to follow. Madam Speaker, the bill consists in 24 clauses and 4 schedules. While it is not my intention to open debate on it today, as time is required for members to read it fully and carefully, I should nonetheless like to highlight its main features, including the new provisions to which attention is to be paid. Madam Speaker, I cannot overemphasize the need for careful reading of the provisions. or tendency to talk about what we think the law is or what we think it should be without reading and assessing what is actually drafted has been quite unhelpful in debates on bills before this Parliament. This bill, Madam Speaker, when passed, will repeal and replace the existing Bail Act of 2000. And there are two primary reasons for the rewrite. Firstly, Madam Speaker, all statutes enacted prior to the replacement of Chapter 3 of the Constitution of Jamaica with the new Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, 2011, must be reviewed, especially those which engage fundamentally guaranteed rights and freedoms, and they are to be reviewed for compliance with the Charter. The second reason for the rewrite, Madam Speaker, is that while we have preserved the settled common law principles on bail, the extent of the tidying up and restructuring of the existing Act that would be required would mean that practically every provision would have to be amended. And so the decision was taken to rewrite and replace the existing Act with a new one that is being tabled today. Madam Speaker, the bill honors the entitlement to bail that is guaranteed at Section 14(4) of the Constitution, which provides that any person awaiting trial and detained in custody shall be entitled to bail on reasonable conditions unless sufficient cause is shown for keeping him in custody. Our highest court has opined that it is not in dispute that the Constitution is given a generous and purposive interpretation, and in particular the provisions that enshrine fundamental rights and freedoms should receive a generous and not literalist interpretation. Of equal guidance is a caution that rejection of a narrow or legalistic interpretation cannot mean that other sections of a constitution can be construed as creating rights where they do not contain any. Madam Speaker, Section 14(1)(f) of the Constitution of Jamaica permits deprivation of liberty on reasonable grounds and in accordance with fair procedures established by law in circumstances of the arrest or detention of a person for the purpose of bringing him before the competent legal authority on reasonable suspicion of his having committed an offense or where it is reasonably necessary to prevent his committing an offense. There have been too many examples of people languishing in custody without charge or trial within a reasonable time in our jurisdiction. Madam Speaker, in many cases involving serious crimes, major difficulties are encountered in completing investigations or case files in a timely manner. And we are very familiar with a culture of informa fide. And this culture is still pervasive, and it results in serious injustice. Witnesses are being threatened or even murdered. Many who provide credible intelligence to the police are often reluctant to proceed further to enable the police to convert that intelligence to evidence. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, witnesses and immediate victims are themselves part and parcel of the criminality, resulting in varying levels of investigative complexity. These and other documented peculiarities in our Jamaican society necessitate innovative responses, legislatively and otherwise. Madam Speaker, in our beloved country where we aspire for security and where we value our rights above all, there is no avoiding a balance between freedom and dignity on the one hand and security on the other. It was an eminent Chief Justice of a final court who said that human rights must not become a tool for denying security to the public and the state. A balance is required. A balance is required, a sensitive and difficult balance between freedom and dignity of the individual and national security and public safety. This synthesis between national security and individual freedom reflects the rich and fertile character of the principle of rule of law in particular and democracy in general. Madam Speaker, I notice from discussions in the public sphere on issues when laws are being passed, especially new laws or fundamental review, you almost hear a warning being given, as if the Parliament should not do what the Parliament must do. The foundation of democracy, Madam Speaker, is a legislature enacted freely and periodically by the people. We too often forget this fundamental principle. Undermining the legislature undermines democracy. The legislature is elected by the people to enact laws for peace, order, and good government. Its main role, therefore, Madam Speaker, is to enact statutes. These statutes are subject to judicial review of their constitutionality and judicial interpretation of their meaning. If the judiciary determines that a statute is unconstitutional, the matter returns to the legislature, which may enact a new statute that achieves the same fundamental purpose as a voided statute, while adopting more proportionate means. Madam Speaker, as I've said elsewhere, this process is a proper dialogue between the branches. It is not a dialogue that takes place in meetings between judges and legislators. It is one that takes place by each branch carrying out its constitutional role. This leads me to the bill in particular. A person who is arrested, Madam Speaker, or detained on reasonable grounds that he has committed an offence does not automatically move from arrest or detention to trial. He must go through a process with various stages along the way before he is tried. Having guaranteed an entitlement to bail, the question of bail must be considered once the liberty of the person is engaged on the basis that he is reasonably suspected of having committed an offence. The new bail law, Madam Speaker, will permit a grant of bail at 3 stages: pre-charge, in defined cases, post-charge, and post-conviction in defined cases. I can say that the pre-charge provision perhaps will be of greatest interest to those who have been waiting for the new bail law, and I would like to direct members' attention to that provision. Madam Speaker, the bill sets out very clearly who the deciding official is who will grant bail, and essentially they are the judge, the justice of the peace, and the police constable, who is neither the arresting officer nor an officer involved in the investigation of the offence. And in cases of pre-charge bail, the police officer is to be at the rank of or above superintendent of police. The question of bail in relation to a child, Madam Speaker, is to be determined by the Children's Court in accordance with provisions of the Child Care and Protection Act, with requirement that for a parent or guardian who consents to being a surety to ensure compliance with conditions of bail by the child until the child attains the age of majority. Madam Speaker, grant of bail prior to charge for scheduled offences is set out at Clause 5 with provision for appeal to a parish judge in chambers against conditions imposed. Conditions that...
the Minister's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the Minister be allowed to continue her presentation.
Members, the question is that the Minister be given time to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the provision in respect of bail prior to charge for scheduled offences is set out at Clause 5, and it also has a provision for appeal to a parish judge in chambers against conditions imposed. Conditions that may be imposed when bail is granted by a justice of the peace or by the police are defined, but greater latitude is given to the court to impose conditions as appear necessary. There is a form of notice in prescribed form in the first schedule for administrative ease. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, a feature of the new law is a prescription of forms to enable ease for persons who must use the law and also to minimize delay in getting records of decisions taken.
If I might just intervene for a moment, I'm going to encourage all of us as members of Parliament. We just finished the new Farms Act, and I don't know if we are paying attention to the conditions and reading them, and the presentation by the Minister is very important because these are matters that affect all of us, all Jamaicans, and particularly us at this time. So I would urge us all, because it's a debate that we should understand if we're taking part in it and know why we say A and nay to the clauses that are there. So I'm urging us all as members of a Parliament, and I'm saying it for a particular reason, that we are consenting and saying A sometimes, A and nay, and we're not sure what we're saying A and nay to. Please.
Madam Speaker, I thank you, and perhaps I should add that laws under rule of law must be publicly promulgated, they must be impartially adjudicated upon, and more importantly, equally enforced. And all of us can be the subject of the law. Any law. So, Madam Speaker, in respect of the provision for bail prior to charge, a judge is to consider the reasonableness of conditions imposed and may vary or revoke any condition that would not impair investigation of the offence that the defendant is reasonably suspected of committing. There is grant of bail after charge but prior to conviction at Clause 6. And essentially, Madam Speaker, there is an entitlement to bail unless there is sufficient cause for holding the defendant in custody. And a defendant is not to be held in custody for a period longer than 48 hours without bail being considered. Bail, Madam Speaker, shall be granted to a defendant who is charged with an offence not punishable with imprisonment unless circumstances set out in another clause at 7.5 exist to show in relation to the conduct of the defendant on previous grants of bail or where protection is required. Madam Speaker, only a judge may determine the question of bail where a defendant is charged with scheduled offences in Part 1 of the second schedule, and that feature already exists in the law. Grant of bail after conviction is exceptional. Clause 13 addresses this issue. And the grant may be to defendants who were on bail prior to conviction for offences other than those scheduled at Part 2 of the second schedule and who appeal against conviction. Madam Speaker, the circumstances in which bail may be denied are set out in Clause 7, and I do believe it will be of particular attention to persons as they read the bill. Clause 7.2 is a special provision in relation to defendants charged with the offence of murder, where self-defense does not arise and where the murder is committed in circumstances amounting to capital murder, or where the offence is committed in a zozo, an area under a state of emergency, or where a cordon has been established or a curfew imposed. The clause sets out the details that would guide the court's consideration, and perhaps attention may be directed to Clause 7, 3, I, J, and K. Conditions of bail, Madam Speaker, at Clause 8 are to ensure that the defendant surrender to custody, does not commit an offence while on bail, or interfere with witnesses, or otherwise obstruct the course of justice in relation to himself or others. The law provides that some conditions may only be imposed by a court, and these include surrender of travel documents, imposition of curfew, and the wearing of electronic bracelet. This is a new provision. And I know, Madam Speaker, it was an issue that was raised, I think, by Member Michelle Charles. And I'm pleased to tell her that, you know, all well-thinking persons can immediately appreciate that the wearing of electronic bracelet can go a long way in helping us to address issues. Section 9, Madam Speaker, sets out general provisions relating to bail. Conditions imposed may be varied on application of the defendant or the prosecution. New application for bail may be made in defined circumstances, and those are set out at Clause 9.3. And essentially, it's where there is a change in circumstances affecting the matter since the previous consideration, or where applicable facts were unavailable, applicable or relevant facts were unavailable or did not exist at the time. Bail can be revoked in defined circumstances, including where the defendant absconds, breaches a condition of bail, or commits an offence while on bail. Madam Speaker, I think it was one of my colleagues who said that sometimes we think of victims in a narrow way, but we have victims who are victims of the system and the administrative inefficiencies in our systems. And bearing in mind that, and, you know, Madam Speaker, having seen the law from various perspectives, all information regarding the grant or refusal of bail, they are to be recorded in prescribed form, and they are to be disclosed to both sides, defendant and the prosecution. And this is really for greater protection of the parties and for administrative ease. Madam Speaker, reasons are also to be given, and we have prescribed the form in which the reasons are to be given. And this is where to be given both to prosecution and defendant, where there is a refusal of bail or imposition or variation of conditions, as well as a revocation of bail. Where the defendant is unrepresented, he is to be informed of the procedure for review of decisions to deny, impose or vary conditions or revoke bail. There is an extensive provision in relation to review of bail decisions. Decision of a justice of the peace or the police when the bail is granted out of court is to be reviewed by a judge of the parish court with the jurisdiction to try the offence. And on first appearance in court, where there has been a change in circumstances or where applicable facts were unavailable, the court has a power to review any grant made out of court. A judge also is to review fortnightly cases involving defendants who were granted bail but were unable to take up the grant. Police officer in charge of the lockup or whomever is in charge of the correctional institution is now under statutory duty to supply a list of those defendants to the court at specified times set out at Clause 13.3. The provision for appeal of decisions by the judge is provided for at Clause 12. Appeals by the defendants lie to a judge of the Supreme Court in Chambers from a decision of the parish judge, to a judge of the Court of Appeal in Chambers from a decision of the judge of the Supreme Court, and an appeal by the prosecution lies to the Court of Appeal. Madam Speaker, there is tidying up in respect of absconding by a person on bail, and that is set out at Clause 14. It is punishable on summary conviction before a parish judge to imprisonment up to 5 years, or before a circuit court to imprisonment up to 7 years, and the sentence is to run consecutively to the sentence of the offence for which the person was on bail, if convicted. Madam Speaker, there are new provisions in respect to surety, and they are set out between clauses 16 to 20. In closing, I wish to say that the bill is to be reviewed by a joint select committee of the Houses of Parliament, and I look forward to studied consideration of the provisions in the stages that follow leading up to the passing of the bill. Madam Speaker, we have made every effort to strike the right balance to ensure that the course of justice is not perverted. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, this bill is a very important bill. And as we know, it has been in gestation for over at least 4 to 5 years. I recall having sight of an initial draft, and it is just getting here. It's a very important bill, as the Minister indicated. It speaks to and it goes to fundamental rights and freedom of our citizens, and therefore it ought not to be taken lightly. Any legislation that stands the chance or risk of infringing on the rights of innocent Jamaicans, because there is a tendency to presume that once someone is accused or charged, that they are guilty to prove their innocence. It's a presumption. Not saying that that's not the law, but the practice is as such. That's our reality. Madam Speaker, crime and violence in our society transcend political administrations for a number of years.
But it is important. I just want to remind you, we're not debating today.
No,
You're
yes,
just
yes.
responding.
And my response is brief.
Right.
Crime and violence is the foremost problem that faces us. The government, no more than the opposition, wants that to be brought under control. And there is long acknowledgement of a slew of legislative steps to be taken to strengthen our security architecture towards that end. So if our bail provisions need to be strengthened, we have no difficulty. However, it must be, as far as the opposition is concerned, in keeping with the provisions of our Constitution. That is, you know, there have been bills that have been passed in this House that the court has struck down as being unconstitutional. No, I'm saying, Madam Minister, that is a matter of fact. That's not an opinion I'm giving. That bills that have been passed here in this House have been struck down as being in breach of the Constitution. That, as I said, is a matter of fact. We don't wish that to reoccur. All I will say for now, Madam Speaker, as being as important as this bill is, and as I said, it has taken a long time to get here. You know what, last night when I saw the notice that this will be tabled, I came here with great anxiety to see it. But it was not here. It was further delayed to reach our highs. No, earlier on, it was just tabled while we were sitting, right? No, man. But it was a printry. I understand. I made inquiry of the clerk. Yes. So, where I'm going to is, as my colleague intimated. Madam Minister, I presume that we are going to allow for full contribution in the joint select. Right? Full contribution in the joint select. And Madam Speaker, one of the things I have learned in this parliament as long, one of the most useful instrument of this parliament is our joint select. It brings oneness to what comes out at the end. And Madam Minister, I've been on quite a few joint select that has been very fruitful. I look forward to the joint select and the deliberations in this bill. You know, Madam Speaker, I will stand longer just because of that member there from West Kingston.
Madam Speaker, at one stage, I wondered whether Member Jackson was actually listening, because we do not divide on the view of the value to be derived from having review of a bill by a joint select committee of the Parliament. And I don't know why he is of the view that it's only in recent times the courts have discharged their constitutional duty in reviewing bills and declaring whether they are consistent with our Constitution or not. And it is for that reason I say that Parliament has to do its job and the courts have to do theirs, and we're both guided by each other. So, Madam Speaker, on that note, let me thank Member Jackson, who really is saying that he wants to be on the joint select, and I hope his leader will ensure that he is on the joint select committee to review the bill.
Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are copies of the annual report on audited financial statements of the National Works Agency for the year 2014-2015.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Bail Act 2022.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. motions for leave to introduce bills, and the presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, which was just done, and public business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under public business, I just wish to highlight that on the 20th day of September 2022, I gave notice of 2 motions proposing amendments to the standing orders. Standing Order 87 stipulates that, quote, unless the Speaker otherwise directs, not less than 12 days' notice of a motion to amend the standing orders shall be given, end of quote. And now that mandatory notice period has expired, Madam Speaker, I therefore move that the items standing in my name at numbers 5 and 6 under public business be referred to the Standing Orders Committee for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, by way of explanation, item 5 requires a review of Standing Orders 14 to 19 relating to questions, and item 6 concerns an amendment to Standing Order 32C to increase the time allocated for each member to make their speech during the State of the Constituency debate. Madam Speaker, I now ask that the motions be referred to the Standing Orders Committee. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I know that this matter is going to be dealt with by the Standing Orders Committee, but as I indicated earlier in my presentation, we are anticipating certain provisions in the standing orders to take effect on the second Tuesday of the month. I suspect the acting leader of government business is wishing for that matter to be looked at the Standing Orders Committee before we invoke it next Tuesday. I am speaking of Prime Minister's question time. It's a provision that we, and you had given some acknowledgement of that, we intend to utilize. In the meeting of the Standing Orders Committee, we will try to determine the framework, whether 1 question is allowed or 3, and your determination as to urgency and relevance and so on. So I'm looking forward to the meeting as early as possible so that we can, as soon as possible thereafter, get clarification and be certain as to the provisions relating to that and other matters dealing with questions and answers.
Madam Speaker, for my part, I really look forward to the review that is to take place. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, I really think that we need to look at a number of the orders of the standing order, which incidentally are regulations of the Constitution, to make them more fit for purpose and the purpose of discussion and deliberation of matters here. I note Member Paulwell has been riding his intention. The honourable member from East Kingston and Port Royal, which really is a proper way of addressing each other. Perhaps, Madam Speaker, as part of the review, we should get a little tag in front of each seat. No, plaques are known to be done, which indicate who sits where as a member from the constituency, and it would ensure that none of us falls into error, as I did in improperly referring, or the public. But it is important, and I just say, Madam Speaker, we sometimes underestimate the importance of helping the public to realize that the legislature is the foundation of our democracy. So, Madam Speaker, I commend the acting House Leader, and I look forward to the results of the deliberations from the Recs Committee.
Thank you, House Leader, Opposition Leader of the House, and Minister Malahoo, Forte, and to say I knew this would not be controversial. Everyone would want extra time when it comes to the state of the constituency debate. So at this point, Madam Speaker, I ask that the motion be referred to Standing Orders Committee. Seek your approval. Okay.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion be referred to the Standing Orders Committee. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, we are anticipating the Prime Minister's arrival when I will ask for a recommittal of statements by ministers. At this time, I ask for maybe a 5-minute
Members, the question before the House is that we do suspend this sitting until the arrival of the Prime Minister, which I expect will be before 4:15. He's on his way here. I'm just thinking traffic. Those in favor? Those against? Those against? The House is now suspended until the Prime Minister arrives.
Are you using cash only and having doubts about paying digitally? Or are you paying with one click of a button? Either way, the next Caribbean Economic Forum is for you. Join the conversation on Moving to Digital Payments. What does it mean for me? On Thursday, October 6th at 8 p.m., join industry leaders Wendy Delmar, John Outridge, and Charmaine Powell to learn about central bank digital currencies and private digital payments in the Caribbean and what's in it for you. Log on, tune in.
How do bills become law in Jamaica? Laws are made to create order, to ensure our safety, and to protect our rights against abuses by other citizens, organizations, and even the government itself. A bill is a proposal for either a new law or for a change to an existing law. Jamaica's parliament is responsible for making our laws, and that responsibility is shared between two houses. There are 21 parliamentarians appointed from both political parties to the upper house, also known as the Senate. And there are 63 members of parliament that we, the people, elect to the lower house, also known as the House of Representatives. To pass a law, there is a minimum of 6 stages required in each house. The process can begin in the upper house by a senator or in the lower house by your member of parliament. And their proposals for a new bill can certainly start with you, the citizen. Now, since the process often begins in the House of Representatives, let's start there. 1. The first stage begins with the introduction by the minister responsible for the bill, followed by the first reading of the bill by the clerk to the houses. This clerk is more like the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer for the Parliament. An announcement of the bill is published in the Gazette. This is a public newsletter that the government uses to inform the citizens of what the Parliament is doing on your behalf. 2. The second reading begins with a summary of the bill by the minister. The main reasons for the bill are discussed both by the government and opposition members to determine if Jamaicans would really be better off with the new law or changes to an existing law. A vote is taken by the House to determine if the bill will move to the committee stage. Sometimes before going to that stage, the minister responsible for the bill can recommend the use of a joint select committee. It's called joint as its members are taken from both the upper and lower house. To benefit from greater consultation, the committee is empowered to invite the public to share their views of the bill in writing or in person, and does so through radio, TV, and newspaper adverts. This joint select committee submits its recommendations to the House of Representatives. The House debates this report, and a vote is taken to determine if the bill should go on to the committee stage, where it is examined by a committee of the whole House. Yes, That's the name. And that's what it is. A committee of all the members of Parliament that carefully examines each clause and makes improvements to ensure the bill will achieve its objectives. As chairman, the Speaker of the House monitors the process to make sure the rules of the House are obeyed and the process moves along smoothly. 4. The Committee of the Whole House examines the bill clause by clause, then sends its recommendations for changes to the House of Representatives. This is called the report stage. 5. The bill then passes to the third reading to allow a final opportunity for MPs to make changes before it is sent to senators in the upper house. 6 to 10. In the upper house, the senators go through the same steps we just described. If any changes are made, the bill has to be returned to the House of Representatives for their discussion and approval. Now, if the bill had started in the upper house, it would also have to be returned to them for approval of any changes made by the lower house. 11. Throughout the entire process, the bill is being checked by the Legislative Council. That's the Parliament's lawyer. But before the last step, a copy is sent to the Attorney General of Jamaica for final review and certification. 12. If all is well, the bill is sent to receive the royal assent from the Governor General as the representative of the Queen, Elizabeth II. The bill is now an Act of Parliament. The Act is gazetted, and the rights of Jamaicans are further preserved and protected by a new law.
There is a fundamental and irreconcilable conflict between the interests of the tobacco industry and public policy interests. The tobacco industry, for profit, produces and promotes a product that has been scientifically proven to be highly addictive and causes millions of deaths per year. This is in conflict with the intent of public policies, particularly those related to safeguarding the health and well-being of citizens. In keeping with Jamaica's treaty obligations, the proposed Tobacco Control Act makes provision for the strict regulation of the interaction between public officials and the tobacco industry. Strong tobacco control policies, such as the provisions in the proposed act, will safeguard public health policies and give the next generation a chance to live and breathe easily.
Do you wish there were a way your community could get funding to improve a school, health center, sports program, and more? There is! It's the Constituency Development Fund. Here are a few things you probably didn't know about the CDF and how you can make it work better for you. The CDF policy promotes citizen participation in community development and protection of taxpayers' funds. It outlines that MPs are to meet with citizens at least once every 2 years to agree on the projects needed. You know, it used to be once a year? We should really go back to that. Projects developed without community consultation are not to be approved by the bipartisan CDF Parliamentary Committee. There are 26 government agencies that implement projects, usually for a small fee. Funds are provided directly from the Office of the Prime Minister to the implementing agency, not through the Member of Parliament. The CDF unit monitors project costs and implementation, so if you have questions about how the CDF are run in your community, contact them. To ensure no one project or community gets all the funds, there are 6 project categories with spending limits for each. There must be no less than 5 and no more than 20 projects each year. To learn more, visit jampja.org to view your MP's CDF info and tell them how this fund has impacted you. If you don't see your MP's CDF reports, then put them under little pressure, man. Call, tweet, email. Ask them when they'll submit it and when is the next CDF meeting. Change is possible. It's already happening. What we need is you. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life-changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
Let us resolve our family disputes peacefully. A family is a circle of love, support, and strength. Violence has no place.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Develop a sense of purpose that says you're not here by accident. You are here for greatness. You are here with destiny in mind. You are supposed to do something great, and you are on that pathway. There are persons who are in the departure lounge of life, at the end of their life, and they look back and they have regret because they never took time to uncover and develop a sense of purpose. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do before I leave this 7 billion people planet called Earth? What am I supposed to accomplish? Having a sense of greatness that's in you. You're talented, you have gifts and abilities. Some of you are good with numbers, some of you are good with words, some of you are good with both, some of you are artistic, creative, some of you are sports-oriented, and there are many things. And you take time to discover what are you passionate about. What can I just do naturally? I can jump out of my sleep and do it easily. Speaking now to your talents and abilities, your giftings. All of these come into your sense of purpose. The things that you are to do in life as you are to impact people. When you dream, when you close your eyes, what do you see yourself doing? And knowing that the sky is the limit. Second thing I want to say quickly is that you must learn to persevere. I heard Marquis speak about perseverance. Everybody say perseverance. Sometimes we don't achieve much because we give up too easily. You have to learn, if you want good, your nose have to. Yes, man, you have to get your feelings hurt and still go on. When I was doing my PhD, boy, a man tell me, man, people seem to like you. Wayne, why don't you just leave this program and go back to your country? You have a master's. The PhD is not for you. Why don't go and make money? And that was a racist comment because I was black. I was the only black person in the program. And he was saying things that hurt me, and I didn't want him to see me offended. I left his presence, went into my room, and I cried. But I decided to continue in my effort for excellence. Are you hearing me? And so perseverance means to continue a course of action in spite of difficulty, in spite of opposition. When they fight you down, when bad mind reach you, and they're fighting you down, and they say you're not the right gender, young ladies, and they say you don't deserve to be here, don't pay no attention, press on nonetheless. And it means you also have to have the right people around you. Be careful of the company you keep. As you go through life, you're going to make mistakes. As you go through life, you may fail at something. You want people around you who can encourage you to get up again.
Jamaicans, look on the murder rate. You think that normal? We need to get every illegal gun and save our country.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Mommy?
Yes, Zoe?
Can we read this book? It will only take 10 minutes.
Sure, sit down. Every spring, Madame Angel Wing arranges.
Do you have 10 minutes? Read with your child today. Reading with your children for just 10 minutes each day helps develop their language and listening skills, stimulates their imagination, and expands their understanding of the world. So, start reading with your child today.
Crime and violence is infecting our youth. We must work together to rescue them from the gangs, engage them in productive activities, and safeguard Jamaica's future.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
People always say government must be held accountable. But is whose job to keep government accountable? And what that really mean? Well, you see, when ministers and public officials have to provide answers for decisions made and can face consequences for those actions and decisions, that means they're being held accountable. Keeping government accountable is a key responsibility of our elected representatives, and the Parliament provides special tools or mechanisms just for this. As citizens, we need to understand how they work so we can play our part to ensure that the members of Parliament we elect are using the tools and doing their job well. Here are 4 of the primary tools you should understand and talk to your MP about. Tool number 1, Ministers' Statements. To effectively monitor the government, MPs need to stay informed. Every Tuesday when Parliament sits, different cabinet ministers are scheduled to give an update on decisions they're making on our behalf. These updates are called Statements by Ministers. They cover a wide range of national issues that other MPs, media and citizens may have questions about and wish to examine further. That brings us to tool number 2. What do you do when you want information? You ask questions, and that's why we have question time. Both opposition and government MPs can submit questions to the Prime Minister or Cabinet Ministers for details on, for example, how a contract was awarded or expenditure to purchase tablets for schools. So if you ever have a question for a government minister, try asking through your MP. After all, that's why they're your political representatives. They should represent your questions and concerns to the government. Tool number 3, Parliamentary Debates. When cabinet ministers present the government's proposals for new policies, laws and programs, parliamentary debates allow both opposition and government MPs to air concerns, make suggestions and endorse proposals. If you ever watch those debates, you know they can get a little fiery. But the debate is important as it informs decisions and continues until a vote is taken on the way forward. Then we have tool number 4, Parliamentary Committees. The general sittings of Parliament are not always sufficient for detailed examination of government work, so oversight committees are formed using government and opposition members to do just that. Some committees like the PAC and the PAAC are in place for an entire parliamentary term. Their job is to monitor the use of public funds to find ways to increase value and efficiency while reducing waste and corruption. Cabinet and state ministers are not appointed to oversight committees since they are a part of the government. Some committees are formed when a need arises. For example, joint select committees are formed to review draft policies or legislation or to probe other matters of serious national importance. Members of these committees are both opposition and government MPs and senators, and these committees will usually invite citizens to share their opinions, concerns, and recommendations. So there you have it, 4 accountability tools of Parliament that are used to make sure government run right. Visit jampja.org to find contact information for your MP. Invite them to meet with the community so they can better represent your issues and concerns in Parliament and keep government accountable. Get involved and let's make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Here is a special parenting message brought to you by the National Family Planning Board, 5 Sylvan Avenue, Kingston 5. There's no job more important than parenting. That was a special parenting message brought to you by the National Family Planning Board, 5 Sylvan Avenue, Kingston 5.
Hey you! Yes you! Let's go on a public sector journey together. Check your rear view and lift the gas. We all rely on public sector workers, from hospitals and care workers to schools, where our children get the education in emergency situations when we are most in need. In turn, public sector workers are paid by us. The current compensation structure in the public sector is complex, inconsistent, and inequitable. That's about to change. Welcome to the new compensation system. The new system is simple and easily understood. It's consistent, enabling equitable application and transparency across the public sector. It will reward high performance and it's sustainable. The government of Jamaica is committed to investing in its people and building a better public sector for.
Here's how we sign the alphabet.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sign with me?
Money! So what you say? Talk to me, right?
It takes so long, man. People have places for going, you know. Get them on the urban table number.
Happy and nice. You know how much people me have to deal with before me reach here, sir? You're lucky.
Put 3 bills by number 5.
Wait. We can place the bet with you? Yeah, man. You see when you win with we, you get a little extra. So what you say?
Police, nobody move.
Illegal gambling is a criminal offense. If convicted, you could face a fine of up to $1 million or up to 18 months in prison. When gambling, choose licensed and registered gaming establishments. Stop illegal gambling now. Call Crime Stop at 311 to report illegal gambling. You don't have to give your name. A message from the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission.
Are you using cash only and having doubts about paying digitally? Or are you paying with one click of a button? Either way, the next Caribbean Economic Forum is for you. Join the conversation on Moving to Digital Payments. What does it mean for me? On Thursday, October 6th at 8 p.m., join industry leaders Wendy Delmar, John Outridge, and Charmaine Powell to learn about central bank digital currencies and private digital payments in the Caribbean and what's in it for you. Log on, tune in.
Calling all farmers and fisher folk. The AgriCare Insurance Plan enrollment period is now over.
If you are experiencing symptoms of the monkeypox virus, including fever, intense headache, swelling of the lymph nodes, back pain, muscle ache, lack of energy, and/or a rash on the skin, you must self-isolate immediately and call ahead to your health center or doctor before visiting. The virus may enter the body through broken skin, even if not visible, the respiratory tract, or mucous membranes, eyes, nose, or mouth, and has an incubation period of between 5 and 21 days. The spread of monkeypox may occur when a person comes into close contact with an infected animal, direct contact with monkeypox skin lesions or scabs of an infected person, contact with clothing or linen such as bedding or towels used by an infected person, and the coughing or sneezing of an individual with a monkeypox rash. Wear a mask. Frequently wash hands and practice physical distancing as part of the infection prevention and control efforts. For additional information on monkeypox, visit the Ministry of Health and Wellness website at moh.gov.jm or contact the local public health department. Whenever you hear the following tone, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, will be giving information on an emergency situation affecting the island. Please be on the alert and listen to your radio and television for further information. This was a test of the Emergency Alert System, brought to you by ODPEM.
Remember that big project the government announced them was going to from when? You ever catch yourself and wonder what happened to it? Stop wonder like an outsider and start move like the country belong to you. You have a right to publicly owned information, and the Access to Information Act gives you that power. I know you have enough questions about how government are run or not run, so let me show you how it works. Say mosquito spraying going on in your community, your children asthmatic and you want to know what chemicals are in it. Or what about that Auditor General report on a public official getting twice his salary with no proper approval? Is your taxes and you want to know if they paid it back? First, do some basic searching to see what is already on government websites. If you don't see what you're looking for, make a formal ATI request by completing the application form on the ATI site or sending a letter or email. And remember, you don't have to say why you need it. It is your right to know. Make sure you send your request to the right agency, and once they confirm receipt, they get 30 calendar days to provide the information, a maximum of 60 if extra time is needed. Yes, I know you want access to everything, but sensitive documents are protected from the public for up to 20 years. For example, documents that would expose a citizen's personal privacy, or those dealing with cabinet discussions, the Governor General's office, or information on the investigative activities of the security forces. Any public officer who tries to destroy or hide any official document can be sanctioned. And if you're having difficulties, the ATI unit will help. So, what if the chemicals in the mosquito spray are toxic? What if the agency did not even try to get back the money they paid out? Call or email your MP. Share the concern, because as your elected representative, they can represent your questions to the government ministers in the House. Remember, it is the job of parliamentarians to monitor and hold the government to account on your behalf. Is not every country give citizens this kind of power, you know? And at 20 years we have this law, and we barely use it. So access information and mind your business, Jamaica. Visit jampja.org today to see what information we access to make it easier for you to hold the government to account. Let's do our job to make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Crime is Jamaica's #1 threat. As we stay apart while working together to fight COVID-19, we must all live good and unite against crime and violence in Jamaica. Live good means talk it out, don't fight it out. We must live good to build a safe Jamaica. Stay home, stay safe, live good.
What if they knew that you abused her? Her family?
Mr. Jones.
And your colleagues, how will they look at an abuser? When the law comes knocking, you'll have nowhere to run.
Mr. Brown, you're under arrest. Please get up, hands behind your head and interlock your fingers.
Turn your back on abusers. Report gender-based violence to the police. There's no excuse for abuse. Call the Bureau of Gender Affairs at 876-754-8577.
How many more must die because of reckless drivers? How fast is too fast? Make we take time, no man. Obey the rules of the road. Drive with care.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
One, two, three, two more. 1, 2. Adults to 30 minutes activity daily. Love your body, treat your body right. Vegetables, make sure you eat plenty. Children do 60 minutes activity daily. Drink some water when you feel thirsty. Cut down dessert and have a smoothie. Jamaicans, love your body, treat your body right. Love your body, treat your body right. Just eat right. Love your body, treat your body right. Love your body, treat your body right. One more time now. Love your body, treat your body right. Love your body, treat your body right. Just eat right. Love your body, treat your body right. Love your body, treat your body right. Listen up. Make sure you know your health status. Go a doctor and get a regular checkup. Chronic disease can slowly creep up. We can lower the risk and live up if we just eat right and get moving. Jumping, running, dancing, or skipping. Change the children, them lazy habit. Make them play out the door and put down the tablet. Jamaicans, love your body, treat your body right.
This Honourable House resumes its sitting.
Madam Speaker, and I will ask for the recommittal of statements by ministers to allow the Prime Minister to make a statement. Thank you.
Members, the question before the House is that we have the recommittal of the item statements by ministers on the agenda. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Prime Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for your patience and understanding. I'm not abusing the Prime Minister's privilege. It's just a matter of some national importance why I detained Parliament to make this statement. Madam Speaker, I rise to give an update on the progress of the Bernard Lodge development. The House may recall that the Cabinet appointed an enterprise team chaired by Chartered Accountant Mr. Linval Freeman to supervise the divestment of government-owned lands within the Greater Bernard Lodge development in St. Catherine. They commenced work in late January 2021, deciding to divest the development lands in phases. To date, 2 phases have been successfully completed, with a third now in progress. The Development Bank of Jamaica monitors and gives technical support to the enterprise team to ensure that the divestment is in keeping with government policy and governance standards. The Greater Bernard Lodge Development Plan which is projected on the screens before you, will create an integrated community of 5,400 acres of land, of which 3,027 acres, by far the largest share, are dedicated to agriculture, with the remaining 2,370 acres designated for housing, light industrial and commercial activities, social services, open and recreational space, and an urban center. So far, the Cabinet has approved the sale of some 1,225 acres of land for mixed residential, commercial, and light industrial purposes to 7 different developers. Cabinet has also approved the transfer of 102 acres of land to the National Housing Trust and the Housing Agency of Jamaica at 0 cost as part of the effort to lower the cost of housing to persons of limited means. To date, gross earnings from land sales are expected to exceed 3.8 billion Jamaican dollars. Madam Speaker, members will note that the landowner, SCJ Holdings Limited, has substantial legacy obligations of more than $2 billion. Incurred, we're almost there. Incurred in connection with the divestment of the government-owned sugar estates and significant operating costs associated with the maintenance and securing unused property and other assets. Madam Speaker, just to clarify that point a bit, even though the lands may not be in use, the SCJ still has to secure them. And Madam Speaker, the security cost is high. And in fact, even on these lands, which are quite extensive holdings, there was a booming trade in illegal sand mining, which would destroy the value and usefulness of the land. And so the SCJ had to undertake significant security contracts in order to preserve the land. So whilst the SCJ is a land bank, it has high maintenance and management costs to hold these properties. And so it is actually problematic for the SCJ to have lands for which they are not using. So, Madam Speaker, the net proceeds of the Bernard Lodge land sales will be applied in clearing these obligations, and the divestment of the properties will lower SCJ's operating cost and place the organization in a stronger financial position. Aside from its primary duty in managing the sugarlands, it also has an obligation to develop agriculture and other uses for lands they hold. Therefore, the SCJ has undertaken significant expenditure to improve agricultural infrastructure in the master plan area, in payment of compensation to farmers and the costs associated with land preparation and the re-establishment of farmers. Madam Speaker, members would be aware that to meet the requirements of the Development Master Plan and regularize the informal and ad hoc occupation of the lands, a structured and orderly settlement plan was undertaken, which included relocation, formalization of leases, and payment arrangements associated with those leases, and assessment of costs associated with this exercise. Nonetheless, to date, some 142 farmers have been orderly and formally settled on plots of land and have received compensation in excess of $650 million from the SCJ. So what existed before, Madam Speaker, was that farmers, some with official leases and some informally, occupied the land. Some lands were used for agricultural purposes and others were just held and not used. So it was quite an ad hoc arrangement in the area. What has happened now is that we have orderly settlement and use of the Bernard Lodge lands for agricultural purposes. And as I have said, we now have 142 farmers who have formal leases, formal arrangements to pay, and the lands are being utilized. So it's not a situation where people just hold the land for holding its sake and not actually doing agriculture. The cost of land clearance and preparation, farm road construction and rehabilitation, the opening and expansion of stormwater drains, the provision of electricity, and the construction of an irrigation system has also been borne by the SCJ, and work is ongoing. Irrigation water is now provided to farmers via the Rio Cobre Canal system, which cost for the time being is absorbed by the SCJ until the construction of a modern pressurized irrigation system is completed. And we have started the engineering designs on this pressurized irrigation system already. To ensure an uninterrupted supply of irrigation water, the first 2 earthen reservoirs have already been constructed. Well, one of the 2 proposed earthen reservoirs is already constructed. These reservoirs will have a combined capacity of 10 million gallons. Already, many of the farmers are in full production, with vendors and other persons visiting the farms on a regular basis to purchase produce for retail and domestic use. So, Madam Speaker, we now have a well-structured agro-park that has the potential to become a model for agricultural development in the Caribbean. I visited it, Madam Speaker, and I'm very pleased to see how former sugarlands have been transitioned into other forms of agriculture, and you will see some pictures showing how the land has been utilized. These lands, which have been unutilized or underutilized for many years, and which were becoming a location for illegal dumping, illegal sand mining, and a haven for criminals, is now realizing their full potential in the most comprehensive urban development undertaken by the government of Jamaica. And it is certainly the first development that seeks to integrate agriculture in such a significant way in urban development. Madam Speaker, 3 housing developers have already commenced construction of their respective housing schemes on the divested lands. It is expected that between them, some 6,000 houses will be available in the near term, with the other developers expected to follow shortly. It is anticipated that the Greater Bernard Lodge will see the construction of some 50,000 new housing solutions over the next 5 to 8 years. The community will be complemented by a modern urban center with all social services and amenities to make Bernard Lodge the place of choice to live, work, do business, raise families, and retire. Madam Speaker, a unique feature of the divestment of the lands is that successful purchasers must pay an impact fee. This is a sort of development fee for building out the foundational carrying infrastructure, that is the water, sewage, provisions for fiber optics, drainage, roads, and green spaces. These fees are paid into a special purpose vehicle that manages and executes the construction of the infrastructure to ensure quality and uniformity throughout the entire development. Too often, Madam Speaker, we have seen government divest lands for housing development, and the quality of the infrastructure is abysmal, if not non-existent. Ultimately, the government bears the cost to build out sewer treatment plants, lay water pipes, and pave roads that developers ought to have done. In this development, we have ensured that the owners who will purchase their houses in the future do not suffer the discomfort of acquiring a property only to find out that they have no sewer. Their roads were not paved, though they were promised. And Madam Speaker, on my desk are several such developments for which the NHT and the Housing Agency and the Ministry of Housing have had to be doing remedial work when these lands were divested, sometimes in joint venture partnerships. The developers were to have put in these infrastructure, but they simply didn't. And the residents are left with them. And too often you go into a development, Madam Speaker, in your constituency you may have had the experience, and the residents come to you and say, look at our roads, the parish council won't fix the road, the NWA won't fix the road. And when you investigate, the government authorities will tell you, well, it's not theirs for one, it's a subdivision. The developers should have completed the infrastructure, right? The parish council can't take over roads that are not at a standard. And so the residents are left to bear the discomfort. And of course, they are taxpayers, and they are looking at the government to rectify the situation. But can you imagine the massive budgetary allocation that would have to be made to treat with all the housing schemes and developments where infrastructure should have been put in by the developer but was not done? So, Madam Speaker, we are not making that mistake with the Bernard Lodge development. The developers will pay or have been paying their impact fees up front, and we are not allowing the developers themselves to do the infrastructure. Because what you will find is that one developer will say, I can do it cheaper, or I will do it to this standard. No, we want one uniform, high-quality standard. So, though delayed by COVID-19 restrictions and bouts of inclement weather, construction is well advanced with the laying of water pipes and sewage infrastructure, and potable water is already available to much of the development area. A 5-kilometer highway will traverse the development from east to west, and these works are currently the subject of an open tender. A flood mitigation plan has been designed and implemented, and will be implemented rather, on a phased basis. And Madam Speaker, I wanted to say a little bit about the flood mitigation. 100 acres, a little over 100 acres of land has been dedicated in the master plan as a catchment area for a retention pond for a 50-year rain event. So this is a development area, the total development area, and we have reserved this area as a kind of retention area. Just so that members understand, areas in green are agricultural, and the areas in blue are residential for development. Areas in yellow have not yet been sold, they are to be sold. And over here is the proposed urban center. Madam Speaker, it is government policy that the Greater Bernard Lodge development should be inclusive. We are not just putting up lovely structures. We want to build communities of order, security, dignity, respect, and fairness. Absolutely. Over the years, an informal community of former sugar workers and their descendants took shape in the middle of the Bernard Lodge lands and predated the development plans. Go back with the slide. So, to orient the Parliament, this community called Clifton, as you can see, it is in the middle of the development. But because all of this area was sugar lands, sugar workers would live on the sugar estate. And many of them were given permission and rights to live. And this community, Clifton, would have predated the development plan that we had. The government of Jamaica, as far back as 2009 or even before, and across administrations, decided that this community of Clifton should be regularized. The process of regularization is ongoing, with many informal settlers given letters of possession. SCJ Holdings Limited already has in hand in excess of 350 registered titles for lots in the Clifton community, and these will shortly be distributed to the new landowners. The Member of Parliament has played a significant role in this exercise. The member opposite, Madam Speaker, reminded us that we must not mention our members by name. So the member for South St. Catherine was instrumental in ensuring that the residents in this informal community were regularized and the legal process engaged to get them titled. And Madam Speaker, I wish to acknowledge his role and thank him for working with the SCJ to have the community regularized. We are committed to upgrading the road network in the community and to provide residents with access to a proper water supply and connection to a central sewage system, which is now under construction. A police post is to be established in the development area, which will also provide added security to the law-abiding members of the community who have, over the years, been plagued by criminal activity. Madam Speaker, our review of the community shows that it is a community that has been captured by criminal gangs. Madam Speaker, when undertaking development of this nature, security is built into the design. So we don't only look at the civil engineering issues, the architectural and engineering issues. You know, we also design the community to maximize security. So, Madam Speaker, we design the community, for example, to ensure that proper sensors are strategically placed. And those sensors could be cameras, they could be other sensors to detect gunshots or sensors that would detect heavy traffic. So we design, this community is being smartly designed, meaning that this will be a smart city. That's the concept. So the National Security Council has taken a great interest in looking at all elements of security in the area. So we are looking at things, for example, things such as lighting. How do we maximize lighting in the area? We're looking at things such as where people would gather. How do we control access to spaces? So these are all issues that in any development you have to consider up front. Unfortunately, that has not been the case in the history of our development of communities, but we are taking a different approach to urban development. So the National Security Council gets a regular briefing on this. And in our own assessment of the area and the security threats in the area, including the existence of criminal gangs and the capture of communities, Madam Speaker, and our survey, we received a report and we have done our own surveillance, and we have discovered that in proximity to Clifton, which is shown, go back one slide, please. So this is the Clifton community demarked in red. Clifton community demarked in red. But just above it, if you're facing it, it would be to your left. This area, has been captured. So, Madam Speaker, the National Security Council, in reviewing the development plan, observed an insidious and growing threat in the area where alleged gangsters were capturing lands in the area adjoining the Clifton community, creating their own informal subdivision and selling these lands under the false pretense of ownership or building on them themselves. We are showing you now some pictures, not the best quality, but you can see what is going on.
These are not poor squatters.
These are not the structures of poor persons squatting. The capturing, the SCJ has given warning and served notice to cease and desist. The capturing and illegal construction has continued to the point where some 30 structures have been identified. Let me be clear. The government wants every Jamaican to be able to own their own home and a piece of Jamaica. But it must be done orderly and lawfully. This illegal capturing and building on public or private land will not be tolerated. Madam Speaker, in August, when I went to open 2 housing developments in St. Catherine Estate was one, and in that presentation, I alluded to this, and I was very clear that we will not allow the illegal occupation of public lands, capturing them, pretending to sell them under the false pretense of ownership, or building on them. And in particular, Madam Speaker, we will not allow criminal gangs to create communities in this country. Madam Speaker, as you see in front of you by the pictures, this illegal capturing and building on the lands compromises the well-laid development plan. It takes away the land designated for agriculture. You will note, Madam Speaker, so go back to the previous slide. Previous slide. All up here that's farming, likely peppers or tomatoes. And this is what has happened with the illegal capture. So, Madam Speaker, aside from the technical and security issues that it poses, all of Jamaica must acknowledge, every single Jamaican must acknowledge that this is just wrong. The government of Jamaica, therefore, will make a stand. And I repeat, Madam Speaker, the government of Jamaica. This is not going to be left to a government agency. No, this is something that the central government of Jamaica must stand up and ensure it does not continue. Absolutely. So, Madam Speaker, directions have been given to the security forces to have a strong presence in the area to treat with any threats from any criminal that may want to interrupt or exercise control or present any obstacle to the government rectifying that situation. So the JDF has deployed a forward operating base meters away from this area, and they are doing regular patrols, and they have created a security blanket, including regular surveillance, drone surveillance, and other forms of surveillance to see whether or not there will be any movement by criminals in those areas. Madam Speaker, tomorrow the government will act to demolish those structures that have been illegally erected. Where, Madam Speaker, we see extenuating circumstances, and I'm going to be as vague as possible, because there will always be circumstances. We are not an evil government. We are not an unthinking and uncaring government. We care. So, Madam Speaker, after we have demolished the incomplete structures, then, Madam Speaker, we will engage a process to deal with the structures that are complete and occupied. But to be clear, they will not be allowed to stand. Madam Speaker, this will be a watershed moment in Jamaica. Yes. Yes. It is not the first time that the government of Jamaica has moved to rectify illegal settlements. But it is the first time, Madam Speaker, that a settlement, an illegal settlement sponsored by a criminal gang, will be treated with. I want this, Madam Speaker, to be an example and a warning and a caution to Jamaicans. There are persons who are going around pretending falsely to own government lands or private lands and are selling them, collecting money, and we have seen them come to the Ministry of Housing trying to get title, and when we ask them, so how you came by this land? Well, some obscure person that they can't say is who sold them the land, and they have a receipt. I would say to all Jamaicans, don't get caught in those schemes. Madam Speaker, by tomorrow morning, action will begin to clear these structures. It will follow the requirements of the law faithfully, and we will ensure the safety and security of the members of the community that has been legitimately recognized for regularization. But we cannot allow this kind of audacious, brazen is a better word, capture, grab of the people's land. Let this be the day, Madam Speaker, when we change
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Prime Minister for the presentation he just made, and to indicate that it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until Tuesday, October 11. Next, in fact, Madam Speaker, we will resume the State of Constituency debates when we will have presentations from MP Donovan Williams, Kingston Central, MP Delroy Slowly, St. Elizabeth, Northeast. MP Homer Davis, St. James Southern. Dr. Angela Brown-Burke, MP for St. Andrew Southwest, and MP Phillip Henriquez, MP Clarendon Northwest. We will also have a presentation by MP Robert Morgan, who had rescheduled the date previously arranged. So, Madam Speaker, at this time I ask that the House adjourns.
Members, the question before the House is that the House adjourns until next week, Tuesday at 2 o'clock, the 11th of February. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Not of October. The 11th of October, 2022 at 2 o'clock. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.